Hi, it's Katrina. Were there civilizations before us? How far back do we actually go? Were humans once ruled by alien overlords? These are some of the big questions that we're going to dive into in today's video. Here are just some of the strange and mysterious theories about the first civilizations that may have started it all. The cities of the Anunnaki. This question has been around for what seems like forever. Did extraterrestrial visitors assist humans in creating a civilization as we know it? Well, author Zecharia Sitchin certainly thinks so. According to his ancient astronaut theory, an alien race known as the Anunnaki made contact with early humans and played a significant role in our development. And apparently, these otherworldly beings are even mentioned in the Bible. They were the sons of God spoken of in Genesis and in Deuteronomy. They are known as the Anakim. A long time ago, around 445,000 BC, the Anunnaki allegedly established their first settlement called Eridu in ancient Mesopotamia. Sitchin claims that this section of land was also known as Earth Station 1, or Eden. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because you've likely heard of it thousands of times before. From the Bible, the first thing that comes to mind is the legendary Garden of Eden, where the first humans, Adam and Eve, were created by God. Sitchin believes that this is no coincidence. Sitchin and other believers have quite the story to tell. For them, it shouldn't come as a surprise that the real history of mankind has been manipulated and changed over the years, so much so that it's hard to tell fact from fiction. But based on Sitchin's research and beliefs, this is the true story of humanity. The primary goal of the Anunnaki was the extraction of gold, initially in Mesopotamian waters and later in other places around the globe. By 400,000 BC, 8 more cities were constructed by these aliens, with the city of Nippur set up as the Mission Control Center, or spaceport. But by this point, the Anunnaki had run into a problem. They didn't have enough workers to mine their gold. And this leads us to a new type of creation myth, one that claims modern Homo sapiens weren't created by God, but by the Anunnaki themselves. According to the tablets of creation, the Anunnaki formed human beings to basically be their slaves. In order to do this, they combined Anunnaki DNA with that of Homo erectus, the existing hominids on the planet when they arrived. After about 40,000 years, this genetic experiment allegedly resulted in humans that looked similar to you and I. The Anunnaki's influence continued through the pre-flood cities, where humans served these aliens masquerading as gods. But the Great Deluge, or Great Flood, which occurred around 12,000 BC, marked the end of this era. After the flood, the Anunnaki established a new spaceport control center in the Sinai Peninsula. And from there, they divided the Mesopotamian and Nile Valley regions between Anunnaki princes Enki and Enlil. These brothers lived like kings. Anything they wanted, they had. But over time, the Anunnaki grew tired of humans. They were bored with the mundane nature of our existence. So they began appointing certain earthlings to establish kingships in specific regions of the world, like Mesopotamia. So they began appointing certain earthlings to establish kingships in specific regions of the world, like Mesopotamia, the Nile Valley, the Indus Valley, and Mesoamerica. This detailed narrative aligns with biblical stories such as the covenant between Yahweh and Abraham. While the Anunnaki likely didn't concern themselves with trivial human matters, they did supposedly intervene when it came to wars. Some believe that the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah was a nuclear event that wiped these cities off the map. This, according to Zecharia Sitchin, was the result of the First and Second Pyramid Wars. These battles were fought between rival Anunnaki over the control of Egypt, the Sinai Peninsula, and the spaceport, allowing them access to the heavens. These devastating wars supposedly led to the demise of the Sumerian civilization around 2024 BC. It's not clear from Sitchin's writings if the Anunnaki deliberately targeted these ancient human cities, or if they were simply caught in the crossfire when war broke out. It seems more likely that these settlements were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But of course, take this with a grain of salt. As history unfolded, the Anunnaki continued to influence the rise and fall of civilizations, with figures like Cyrus the Great attributing their success to Anunnaki deities. Alexander the Great's conquests and subsequent division of his kingdom further shaped the course of history. While this interpretation intertwines with historical events and biblical narratives, there is ongoing debate about the accuracy of the Sumerian texts that give life to this story. The question remains whether these accounts represent factual history or if they are just mythologies and propaganda shaped by the agendas of their authors. But as we explore more archaeological evidence and historical records, a nuanced understanding of the Anunnaki's role in shaping our history may emerge. The Sons of Mars. Legend has it that Rome's roots trace back to a sibling squabble on April 21st, 753 BC, making it quite the historic family feud. According to myth, twin brothers Romulus and Remus had a rather unique upbringing. They were supposedly born from the union between the god Mars and a human woman named Rhea Silvia. Silvia was a forced Vestal virgin after her uncle Amulius decided to depose her father and eliminate his male offspring. However, when Amulius discovered Rhea Silvia's not-so-chaste secret, giving birth to Romulus and Remus, he wasn't thrilled. His solution was to send the infants down the Tiber River in a basket, similar to the story of baby Moses from the Bible. Instead of becoming fish food, though, they were adopted by a she-wolf, who kept them alive until a shepherd family took them in. Grateful for their wolf mother, the brothers decided to establish a city in the place they were rescued after growing to adulthood. But as fate would have it, sibling rivalry struck. A disagreement over the perfect hill for their city ended in Romulus doing something quite drastic. He killed Remus, just like Cain killed his brother Abel. Romulus then proudly named the city after himself, starting a legacy that would eventually lead to Rome's dominance in the region. However, Romulus wasn't winning any Brother of the Year awards. So, to boost the city's population, he decided to go on a controversial recruitment drive. He began kidnapping women from the nearby territory of Sabinum, which likely wasn't the smartest thing to do. Under Romulus's leadership, Rome rose to power, but his story took an unexpected twist. The guy vanished during a violent thunderstorm, leaving everyone scratching their heads. Maybe he got tired of the drama and decided to take a rain check. But what really became of the murderous twin is up for debate. But I'm highly skeptical about whether this story is historically accurate in any way. But there you have it. Rome's beginnings, sprinkled with sibling drama, divine wolves, and a city founded on the whims of twin brothers. It may be a tale steeped in myth, but it's the kind of legendary origin story that makes Rome, well, Rome. What do you think happened to Romulus? Was he taken up to the heavens by his father? Or did he choose to vanish under the weight of running a kingdom? Let me know what you think in the comments. The descendants of Noah. In the post-Diluvian world, as Noah and his family stepped out of the ark and onto dry land, they faced the daunting task of repopulating the earth. With Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, along with their wives, as the sole progenitors of humanity, the stage was set for a grand saga of civilization building. Genesis chapter 10 introduces us to the 16 grandsons of Noah, who each become the forebearers of diverse nations that would leave a lasting mark on history. This may get a little complicated, but I promise it'll be worth it. The remarkable thing about the people who survived the flood was how long they lived. Some of them stuck around so long that they outlived their own children and grandchildren. There are some who believe this is because Noah's bloodline carried Anunnaki DNA, but that's just a theory. Whatever allowed them such long lifespans paved the way for the formation of family clans, and each grandson of Noah became the patriarch of growing populations. As these clans spread across the earth, they carried with them the names and legacies of their ancestors, shaping the identity of their respective regions. Take, for instance, Gomer, Japheth's son, whose descendants migrated from Turkey to France, Spain, and even Wales, all the while leaving behind traces of their lineage in the very fabric of European history. The descendants of Magog, another son of Japheth, were known as Scythians. They roamed the lands of Romania and Ukraine. The offspring of Magog and Gomer's brother, Madai, settled in what we now know as Iran, leaving a lasting impact on the region. Noah's grandson, Javan, the Greek patriarch, lent his name to Greece itself. After all, Javan is the Hebrew word for Greece. His sons, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim, forged connections with the ancient Greek people. Meanwhile, Tubal's descendants, another grandson of Noah, journeyed to Russia, where Moscow stands as proof of their heritage. And Tiras, the last son of Japheth, whose descendants were known as Thracians, who left their mark in the region stretching from Macedonia to the Black Sea. Among the sons of Ham, Cush became synonymous with Old Ethiopia, while Mizraim laid the foundations of ancient Egypt. Phut's descendants settled in Libya, and Canaan's lineage became intertwined with the land that would later be called Palestine. Notable among them was Nimrod, the founder of Babylon and other ancient cities, shaping the ancient landscape of Mesopotamia. Shem's descendants, including Elam, Assyria, and Aram, made memorable contributions to Persia. But that's not all. Their influence can also be found in the Assyrian Empire and Syria, shaping the course of ancient history. The tale of Noah's grandsons isn't merely a biblical account, but a veritable tapestry of human civilization. Through their descendants, we glimpse the intricate web of connections that link ancient people to modern societies. From the heights of European mountains to the banks of the Nile, from the deserts of Arabia to the plains of Mesopotamia, their legacies persist, a testament to the enduring power of human endeavor and the strength of the human spirit. And now for a quick break, because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big shout out to Laka from Liverpool and Robert Klopstein. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button, because why not? The Hopi Creation Myth. The Hopi creation myth offers a captivating glimpse into ancient beliefs, weaving a tale of cosmic origins and profound wisdom passed down through generations. In the Hopi tradition, creation unfolds not once, but 4 times, with 3 more worlds yet to come. The first world, Tokpela, emerges from the boundless expanse by the hands of Tayoa, the creator, and his emissary, Sotumkneng. Together, they lay the foundation for life, crafting 9 kingdoms and breathing vitality into the cosmos. Central to this creation is the Spider Woman, tasked with shaping life alongside Sotumkneng. Through her hands, humans are born from the earth, imbued with the essence of the divine. As the first beings awaken, they understand the interconnectedness of all existence, recognizing the earth and corn as living entities akin to themselves. But harmony gives way to discord with the arrival of Lavaiohoya, the talker, sowing seeds of division among the people. Suspicion and conflict ensue, prompting Sotumkneng to intervene. Guided by an inner vision, the chosen few embark on a journey led by a cloud to a new world concealed in an anthill. As the waters of destruction engulf the old world, the chosen people float on top of the reeds, their survival attributed to their unwavering faith. Eventually, they discover the 4th world, Tukachi, a realm teeming with potential but also danger. Here, Sotumkneng imparts his final wisdom, urging mankind to heed the path of creation or face the same fate as the old world. The Hopi prophecy foretells of a world marred by greed and strife. However, it also offers a beacon of hope, a road of life leading to self-discovery and unity with infinity. Today, the Hopi people, nestled in Arizona near their ancestral home of Oraibi, remain stewards of ancient traditions and guardians of prophecies that speak to the fragility and resilience of the human spirit. As the 4th world unfolds around them, they emerge as witnesses to the enduring power of myth and the eternal quest for harmony in a changing world. Their legends echo similar stories from other civilizations around the planet, involving a global cataclysm like a flood and rebirth after everything is destroyed. So, could there be a universal truth in these myths? The answer depends on who you ask. The Saluran Hypothesis. Imagine a world where raccoons reign supreme, pondering the mysteries of human monuments like Mount Rushmore with their clever little paws. It seems far-fetched, right? But what if a civilization just like ours existed millions of years ago, leaving no trace behind? That's where the Saluran Hypothesis comes in, named after aliens from the popular show Doctor Who. This theory proposes that humans might not be Earth's first intelligent inhabitants. Physicist Adam Frank, co-author of the hypothesis, clarifies that they are not advocating for Time Lords or lizard people ruling ancient Earth. Instead, they are exploring how to detect signs of past civilizations on other planets. It's like cosmic archaeology, but with a twist. So, why haven't we stumbled upon the ruins of a prehistoric civilization? Well, imagine trying to find dinosaur fossils after 150 million years. It's not exactly easy. Similarly, if ancient beings roamed the Earth for a fraction of that time, spotting their traces becomes a geological needle in a haystack scenario. But Frank and climatologist Gavin Schmidt offer a clue to solve this ancient conundrum: carbon. Just as plastic pollution lingers in sediment, spikes in atmospheric carbon could signal the existence of past civilizations. Think of the Anthropocene, our current era marked by humans, but on a grander scale. You also have to consider the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, or PETM, that occurred 56 million years ago when Earth warmed dramatically. Fossil carbon levels spiked, hinting at unknown causes. But was it the result of ancient aliens? Well, that's unlikely given that the time frame doesn't match up with human history. Instead, the key lies in pinpointing sharp carbon bursts in ice cores, a challenging task comparable to finding a needle in a glacier. But with determination and a keen eye, who knows what ancient mysteries we might uncover? It's a journey through time, where the past whispers secrets of civilizations long forgotten. Teotihuacan, the city of the gods. In the heart of Mesoamerica, nestled in the Valley of Mexico, lies the awe-inspiring ancient city of Teotihuacan. This place was once hailed as the grandest metropolis of its time, the city of the gods. This remarkable urban center flourished from around 100 BC to roughly 550 AD. It boasted a population of up to 200,000 inhabitants and sprawling architectural wonders that continue to captivate modern-day visitors. Perhaps you've been there. Let me know in the comments. Despite its fame, much of Teotihuacan's origins remain shrouded in mystery. Scholars speculate on the ethnicity and language of its inhabitants. Theories range from the Nahua, Otomi, and Totonac peoples to the influence of the Toltec culture. This multicultural society was a melting pot of diverse influences. This is evident in its remarkable architecture influenced by the Maya and Oto-Panian cultures. The city's busy streets buzz with activity, welcoming migrants from distant regions who sought refuge from volcanic eruptions and engaged in vibrant trade. While agriculture was the backbone of its economy, skilled artisans crafted intricate obsidian and ceramic artifacts, and this shaped the city's cultural landscape. At the heart of Teotihuacan are its iconic monuments, including the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. These towering structures still stand today, demonstrating the city's architectural prowess. These monumental buildings, adorned with murals and sculptures, attest to the city's religious fervor and elaborate ceremonies, which often involved human sacrifice. Teotihuacan's mysterious decline in the 6th century AD remains a subject of debate among historians. Some attribute its downfall to internal unrest, fueled by social upheaval and environmental pressures like severe droughts and volcanic eruptions. Others point to the arrival of Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century, marking the final chapter in the city's tumultuous history. Today, Teotihuacan stands as a hauntingly beautiful reminder of the ingenuity and tenacity of its ancient inhabitants. Its majestic pyramids and sacred temples continue to inspire wonder and curiosity, inviting visitors to ponder the mysteries of this lost civilization, or the city of the gods. The Sea People of Legend. The Sea People, mysterious marauders of the Mediterranean, made a lasting impression on ancient history. From around 1276 to 1178 BC, these seafaring raiders prowled the coast, striking fear into the hearts of Egypt and neighboring lands. Egyptian records, the primary source of information on these invaders, paint a vivid picture of their ferocity and impact. Although we're not exactly sure where they came from, the Sea People's attacks were recorded in Egyptian writings, like the well-known stele at Tanis. This inscription talks about their constant attacks by sea. It mentions groups such as the Sherdin, Sheklesh, and Luka, showing that the Sea People were made up of different tribes. Scholars have widely speculated on the Sea People's identity, proposing origins ranging from Etruscan and Mycenaean to Philistine and Minoan. Yet the truth remains elusive, with no definitive evidence to settle the debate. The Sea People's clashes with Egypt are immortalized in the annals of pharaohs such as Ramses II, Merenptah, and Ramses III. These rulers were celebrated for their military prowess, and they faced off against the invaders in epic naval battles and land skirmishes. Ramses II, in particular, boasted of his triumphs over the Sea People, claiming victory in decisive encounters off the Egyptian coast. His successors, Merenptah and Ramses III, also grappled with these formidable foes, with their inscriptions attesting to the ongoing struggle for dominance. Merenptah's battles against the Sea People, chronicled in the Karnak inscription and the iconic Merenptah stele, underscored Egypt's persistence in the face of adversity. Meanwhile, Ramses III's cunning tactics, including ambushes and guerrilla warfare, ultimately turned the tide against the invaders. Despite their defeats, the Sea People's legacy lives on as evidence of the perils of maritime conflict and the resilience of ancient civilizations. Their sudden appearance and swift disappearance continues to captivate historians, fueling endless speculation and debate. So, who were these seafaring people? And what did they have to gain by attacking Egypt? Is it possible that they wanted to gain access to technology? I don't know. Maybe land for farming? Let me know what you think in the comments. Reptile lore. Reptiles have always held a special place in the human imagination. From ancient creation myths to modern folklore, these creatures have captivated cultures worldwide, representing both good and evil forces. While some societies associate reptiles with prosperity and divine power, others perceive them as symbols of fear and malevolence. What about you? Do you love reptiles or fear them? Maybe both? Let me know in the comments. The Ubaid figurines, relics from the earliest remnants of human civilization, may just be evidence of our ancient reptilian overlords. These strange artifacts were found at the archaeological site of Al-Ubaid in modern Iraq, what was once ancient Mesopotamia. They date back to the Ubaid period, around the year 5500 BC, making the statues at least 7,000 years old. The figurines are carved almost to look like humans, except for the outrageous fact that they are certainly reptilian in nature, with obvious reptile eyes and heads like lizards. The theory here is that the Sumerians came into direct contact with reptilian creatures, and they made their figurines in their likeness. Some claim the reptilian overlords revealed themselves to the ancient people of the world and helped them to push society forward before retreating into the shadows. Nobody knows where these reptilians may have come from, though the main assumption is that they came from space. From there on, pretty much every culture had different obsessions with reptiles. In ancient Egypt, for instance, reptiles were often linked to evil spirits, with the great serpent devil Apep symbolizing darkness and chaos. They both feared and respected snakes. After all, if you were bitten, you could die. Snakes were also a symbol of divinity and protection. You've likely seen movies where pits inside Egyptian tombs are filled with snakes, protecting the burial place of pharaohs and keeping tomb raiders away. Serpents were even featured on the headdresses of pharaohs, as they were seen as a symbol of protection. The rearing cobra protected the pharaoh and projected his power. Archaeologists recently found the remains of an enormous snake in Fayum, Egypt. When I say this thing was huge, it was over 40 feet long and weighed as much as 2,500 pounds. To put that into perspective, the snake's weight equaled that of a Ford Fiesta. So it's clear that these things were well cared for by the ancient people of Egypt. Reptiles, but snakes in particular, represented rebirth, creation, and transformation in many cultures. There's even a symbol called the Ouroboros that depicts either a snake or a dragon eating its own tail. The emblem can be found throughout India, Greece, and Egypt. Across various cultures worldwide, there are at least 19 famous serpent deities. In ancient Egypt alone, they had 6 gods that were depicted as snakes. The indigenous Australians had a serpent god known as the rainbow snake that created the universe. And in Greek mythology, they had at least 3 serpent gods. So what's going on here? Why was everyone so obsessed with these slithery creatures? Snakes weren't the only reptiles ancient people were captivated by, though. So now let's talk about their more terrifying counterparts, dragons. Appearing in legends, myths, and folklore throughout various cultures, dragons are often expressed as fearsome monsters. Like Tiamat, a primordial goddess of creation and chaos from ancient Mesopotamian mythology. However, dragons are not universally perceived as evil. In Chinese mythology, these creatures are revered as symbols of wisdom, power, and good fortune. They are considered to be benevolent celestial entities. And we are in the year of the dragon. But in European folklore, dragons are portrayed as terrifying beasts that guarded treasure and terrorized villages. In ancient tales, knights are sent out to vanquish dragons and come back as heroes. Dragons or serpents also appear in Mesoamerican cultures. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, for example, is depicted as a powerful dragon-like deity that's associated with wisdom and creation. Even religious texts like the Bible offer nuanced portrayals of reptiles, from the serpent that tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden to the bronze serpent that was built by Moses to heal the Israelites. Serpents were complicated, representing wisdom, temptation, and divine intervention. The City of 100 Doors. Luxor, meaning the palaces in Arabic, was once known as the City of 100 Doors. Situated on the east bank of the Nile River in ancient Thebes, Luxor is hailed as the world's greatest open-air museum. Encompassing an area of 161 square miles, it boasts awe-inspiring temples like the Valley of the Kings. There's Karnak Temple, Queen Hatshepsut Temple, and Luxor Temple, all housing remarkable ruins and artifacts. As the capital of Egypt during the New Kingdom, Luxor played a pivotal role in ancient Egyptian civilization. Luxor's religious significance is deeply rooted, earning it the title of the City of Amun. But later, during the New Kingdom, it became known as the City of the Gods, with Karnak Temple serving as a center of worship. From the 18th to the 20th dynasty, between 1551 and 1080 BC, numerous temples were constructed by kings and queens to honor the gods. The famed Luxor Temple and the Karnak complex were built during this time. During the New Kingdom, Luxor became a necropolis for royals, hosting the tombs of iconic figures like Ramses the Great and Tutankhamun. The city's architectural splendor is further exemplified by the Temple of Hatshepsut. Despite several civilizations, including Greek, Roman, Coptic, and Islamic, leaving their mark on Luxor, its ancient Egyptian essence lives on. Designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1979, Luxor continues to reveal new discoveries, captivating the world with its rich history and timeless allure. Who wants to go? It's definitely on my bucket list. Among its treasures, Luxor Temple stands out, believed to date back to 1400 BC. Unlike other temples, Luxor Temple is dedicated to the rejuvenation of kingship. Speculations abound about what this actually means, ranging from it being a coronation site for pharaohs to a place of maybe literal rejuvenation, maybe something like the Fountain of Youth. This hypothesis echoes theories of ancient technologies bestowed to early humans by the Anunnaki, as proposed by scholars like Billy Carson. Carson believes that ancient Egyptian pharaohs were capable of turning back the clock, allowing them to live for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. Through his interpretation of ancient texts and the Egyptian kings lists, with some pharaohs ruling for centuries, Carson believes that these rulers had access to technology beyond their time, tech that may not have been from this world. But what do you think? Makes things more fun, at least, doesn't it? The Nazca Civilization. The Nazca Civilization left behind a legacy steeped in mystery and wonder. They were around about 2,000 years ago, thriving on Peru's southern coast from 200 BC to 600 AD. We know them, of course, because of the Nazca Lines, but they were also renowned for their distinctive pottery and textiles. The Nazca Lines, carved across desert plains and hillsides, remain one of the greatest mysteries of ancient civilizations. Comprising geometric shapes, animals, and human figures, these colossal designs were likely part of religious rites and processions. However, their exact purpose is still unknown. The cool part is that we also keep finding more. Some believe that these etchings were created to be seen from the heavens. Some of them are so big that you can't fully grasp what they are unless you see them from the sky. Were these figures made for the gods to appreciate? It's widely believed that the Nazca Lines were created over 2,000 years ago. However, some of the geoglyphs clearly predate the Nazca culture and were likely the work of the earlier Paracas culture. Dating further back to approximately 800 BC, the Paracas culture inhabited the Ica region of Peru, just like the Nazca. They had similar artistic styles, and some scholars like Helene Silverman believe that the Nazca evolved from the Paracas. These large geoglyphs were traditions passed down for hundreds, if not thousands of years. The geoglyphs were made by scraping away earth and rocks to create a negative image. The Nazca Lines extend over an area of almost 190 square miles. That's over twice the size of Washington, D.C. The geoglyphs associated with the Paracas culture are often more human-like, while the lines created by the Nazca are more associated with nature. The Nazca-made lines are typically plants and animals. Examples include a spider, hummingbird, cactus plant, monkey, whale, llama, duck, flower, tree, lizard, and dog, and several geometric shapes. They kind of covered it all. In 2011, a Japanese team discovered a new geoglyph that appears to represent a decapitation scene. Turns out the Nazca also like to collect trophy skulls from their enemies, and also decapitated people. In 2016, the same team found another geoglyph, this time a 98-foot-long mythical creature that has many legs and spotted markings, and is sticking out its tongue. And in 2018, Peruvian archaeologists announced they had discovered more than 50 new geoglyphs in the region, using new drone technology. Lost Continent of Mu. From the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean emerges the tale of the lost continent of Mu. Also known as Lemuria, this fabled land is said to have once thrived with an advanced civilization known as the Nakal, but now its glory is buried beneath the ocean. Lemuria is a lost continent in the Pacific Ocean with the mythical status of Atlantis. One example of a place that could be Lemuria or Mu is Nan Madol. Located on the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, that's Pohnpei with an N, not Pompeii, Nan Madol is an archaeological wonder that's nestled on a patch of coral flats. According to James Churchward, a British writer, inventor, and engineer, this place could be the remains of the lost continent. He even wrote a whole book about it in 1926 called The Lost Continent of Mu, Motherland of Man. So if you're curious, you should definitely check it out. According to local lore, the mystical builders of Mu wielded unearthly powers, shaping colossal stone columns with effortless finesse and ferrying them across the waves. If you take a look at the stone buildings left of Nan Madol, you can understand why Churchward thought this place was built by the mythical Nakal. At its peak, Mu was said to be inhabited by 64 million people, but now almost nothing remains. This lost civilization sounds similar to the tales of Atlantis, a city that held the secrets of advanced technology. But could it be that these two myths tell the story of the same civilization? The continent of Mu supposedly sank into the Pacific Ocean, just like Atlantis was said to be swallowed by the sea. Were they maybe the same place? Were they maybe both ancient places destroyed in great catastrophes in prehistoric days? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. The Nephilim. The Nephilim, mentioned briefly in the Bible, have sparked ongoing debates about their identity and existence. Their brief appearance in Genesis has led to many interpretations and myths. The Bible describes them as heroes of old, warriors of renown, spawning countless theories about their nature. Traditionally, Nephilim are believed to be giants, endowed with superhuman strength. The term Nephilim is thought to derive from Nephal, meaning to fall or cast down. While some link them to fallen angels, this is not directly mentioned in the Bible. Over time, the Nephilim became the offspring of divine beings and humans, maybe evil fallen angels and humans. This isn't really mentioned in the Bible, but more apocryphal texts like the Book of Jubilees, Book of Enoch, and the Damascus document. There is a universal fascination with giants and semi-divine beings. Greek mythology, for example, tells of the Titans, earth-born giants who challenge the gods' authority. Similarly, Hindu epics recount the story of demigods born from divine unions. The biblical narrative hints at a parallel between the Nephilim and these legendary heroes. Instead of being direct offspring of divine beings and humans, they represent a pre-human race of giants, existing long before mankind. The Hebrew and Greek legends also spoke about men of great stature, akin to the demigods of other mythologies. In Hindu tradition, divine beings mate with apes and bears, producing formidable warriors. Did ancient civilizations really see these powerful giants? Were they perhaps one of the earliest civilizations on Earth? Maybe giants were around before the Great Flood. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Ancient China. The history of China goes further back than most people realize. The name China came from the Sanskrit word Sina, originally translated as sin by the Persians. But the Greeks and Romans knew China under a different name. They called it Saris, which meant the land where silk comes from. The actual word China didn't appear anywhere until 1516. But to understand the accurate history of China, we need to go way, way back. A skull fossil discovered in 1927 near Beijing proved once and for all that hominids lived in the area around 700,000 years ago. A different skeleton found in 1965 shows prehistoric human-like creatures were living in China up to 1.7 million years ago. We can't exactly call them humans because they were a much earlier version, not quite Neanderthal, and nowhere close to being an actual human being yet. That's to say, Homo sapiens. Here's what's interesting about these mysterious humanoids who lived in China so long ago. Most scientists agree human beings originated in Africa and then migrated to other parts of the globe. But paleoanthropologists in China believe in a different theory, regional evolution. They believe, based on these ancient human-like fossils, that human beings not only originated in Africa, but also in China. Maybe around the same time human beings were developing in Africa, there was a completely unrelated group of humans, a very prehistoric society, functioning half a world away in China. Gilgamesh and the Sumerians. Chances are you've heard of Mesopotamia. It's the cradle of civilization, the very region on the planet where the first civilizations prospered, fought one another, and crumbled. It's arguably the most important geographical region in history, yet not many people know the truth behind it. Mesopotamia isn't a society or civilization. This is a region designated by the area between the Tigris and Euphrates river systems. It includes parts of Southwest Asia, lands around the Mediterranean Sea, and all of modern Iraq, as well as parts of Kuwait, Turkey, and Syria. It was the rivers that gave this area so much room to blossom, since they allowed for maximum agriculture, which allowed for civilization building. Human activity goes back to 14,000 BC. People first started living in Mesopotamia in tiny settlements, hunkered down in circular houses made from basic materials like mud and wood. 5,000 years later, these small settlements turned into farming communities. Animal domestication began, irrigation techniques brought even more life to Mesopotamia, and this was all thanks to a group of people scientists call the Ubaid culture, too ancient to know very much about. They are quite mysterious. The first real civilization was Sumer, who we call the Sumerians. They came about in 4500 BC and held the entire region for over 2,000 years until the Babylonians took control in 2004 BC. The Sumerians created the first written language, building the first proper city, and coming up with countless other creations that made them the first civilization on the planet. The true pre-Columbians. We consider the Olmecs the earliest civilization in Mesoamerica, meaning the first organized society in Mexico and Central America. Scientists believe they came on the scene around 3,200 years ago in Veracruz, Mexico, and then continued development all the way down the Gulf Coast and into Guatemala. It's true that humans had already been in North America for 10,000 years or more, but the Olmecs were the first to become a civilization. The Maya picked up many of their inventions and style from the Olmecs. They took on some of the Olmec gods and used very similar building practices. You might even say the Maya were the natural evolution of the Olmec. The Olmec were the first humans in Mesoamerica to develop their own form of writing, as well as a functional calendar system. The Maya took their written language and made it more sophisticated, and they took the Olmec calendar system to the next level. And here is one of the most interesting things you probably didn't know. Some historians believe it was actually Olmec refugees fleeing a devastating volcanic eruption who came to central Mexico and built the great city of Teotihuacan. It's considered the most intriguing archaeological site in Mexico, and nobody knows who built it. But a group of Olmecs may have fled the south 2,000 years ago, arrived in the Valley of Mexico, and created their very own civilization. Neolithic Egypt. There's a lot of talk about ancient Egypt, and brief talk about prehistoric Egypt. We know about the pharaohs and the pyramids, but what about the people who came first? Who were these mysterious humans who paved the way for what would become the greatest empire the world has ever seen? Let's look at the dates. The dynastic period of Egypt started in 3100 BC, or 5,100 years ago, and yet Neolithic people flourished in Egypt for about 5,300 years before that. These Neolithic barbarians made cultural innovations that would provide the foundation for the wildly advanced civilizations that came later. We don't actually know much about these people. One of the biggest issues is that because it was so long ago, nature buried the sites once occupied by Neolithic Egyptians. It's all hidden underneath the desert or buried beneath the ancient floodplains of the Nile. It was only recently that members of the combined prehistoric expedition discovered 6 burial sites from Neolithic Egyptians in the western desert. These skeletons are proof that a Neolithic civilization flourished in what is now the desert. It was much wetter 7,000 years ago, which helped people domesticate goats. They learned how to process wild plants and started burying their dead in cemeteries. In time, these primitive people constructed their own megaliths, just like Stonehenge. They came up with their own gods and continued on making advancements until eventually enough people were around to form a full civilization. The Diliman. The Diliman civilization is one of the oldest in the entire world and definitely the most ancient civilization on the Arabian Peninsula. The capital of Diliman was in what is currently the Kingdom of Bahrain. Perhaps the most fascinating thing about the Diliman is that they mention them in Sumerian mythology. The Sumerians thought Diliman was an actual land of gods, a paradise without death, rich in abundant resources, flowing with divine water to create magical gardens, and tended by the mother goddess. The Sumerians believed gods lived in Diliman, and there are some historians who believe Diliman was the inspiration for the Garden of Eden. But the truth is a little less mystical. The city of Diliman and its people became the center of a major trading network that prospered from the 4th millennium until 800 BC. The Diliman mastered the art of trading, securing a cut of all material moving from the Arabian Gulf into Mesopotamia. They had a monopoly on copper, sent goods as far away as the Indus Valley, and the people lived like kings because the land was so prosperous. Seemingly endless water and food made Diliman one of the longest-running civilizations in human history, lasting roughly 3,000 years. It was all going well until piracy finally brought them to their knees. The Mississippian culture. The Mississippian culture was, as you can probably guess, in the southeastern United States near the Mississippi River. They lived here a lot more recently than some other ancient civilizations, but they were the first major power in the southeast. From between 800 to 1600 AD, the Mississippian culture ruled Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, Arkansas, Alabama, Indiana, Ohio, Mississippi, and was moving into Wisconsin and Minnesota when the Europeans wiped them out. If Europeans hadn't arrived, the Mississippian culture would have spread to the Great Plains and probably taken over all of what is today the United States. They did not have a writing system that we know of. They built nothing out of stone, practiced no metallurgy, and yet still built pyramids. The ancient city of Cahokia in what is today Illinois was one of the biggest in the ancient world. They had enormous pyramid mounds, suburbs, giant temples, and all without knowing how to make stone blocks or iron tools. How is this possible? I think we're missing something. When Europeans arrived, they were already nearing the end of their greatest period. Climate change had reduced their agricultural possibilities. These people saw increased warfare and political turmoil. People were already migrating out of the large cities to other political centers. Then the Europeans in the 16th century put the final nail in the coffin: the Nok culture. The Nok culture is an ancient society in one of the most ancient places in the world. In Western Africa, about 2,500 years ago, near what is today Nigeria, a group of people farmed crops using iron tools. It was a first for West Africa, and it allowed this group to become dominant over other nearby cultures. We know them today as the Nok, and they are famous for their ancient skills with ironworking. But what they are most famous for are the bizarre terracotta sculptures they left behind. There aren't a lot of archaeological sites still around from the Nok people. The modern world has bulldozed just about every inch of the Nok homeland. All we have left is a handful of artifacts that they have dug out of the ground. The sculptures the Nok made seem to depict aliens, humanoid-like monsters with oval eyes and unnatural features. Experts were shocked to see that the clay used to make these sculptures all came from the same source. They believe the Nok could control the supply of clay in Africa, which dramatically helped them expand their civilization and exert control. We should also note that the Nok were one of the few civilizations in history that created iron tools after stone tools without first making copper or bronze implements. But alas, they vanished about 2,000 years ago without a trace. Ancient Giraff. There are strange bronze vessels and curious artifacts of a dark greenish stone that have been confusing archaeologists for decades. They have discovered these artifacts, which are obviously connected and can't be mistaken for any other type of relic, in several archaeological digs, all the way from Pakistan to the Persian Gulf and even as far as Turkmenistan. The artifacts date back roughly 5,000 years, and they made them of materials like chlorite, bronze, and ceramic. They are all decorated with mythological scenes of gods, scorpions, snakes, and eagles. According to David Meyer from the University of Tehran, the origin of the vessels was totally unknown to scientists. They didn't belong to the civilizations they were uncovering. This meant they probably traded them across the world. But who? Scientists solved the mystery when the Iranian police confiscated similar artifacts in 2001. They tracked the looted items, which were being sold on the black market, to the county of Giraff. In the 2 decades since, archaeologists have found looted sites belonging to a previously unknown civilization. Going back nearly 6,000 years, an unknown people lived here, and they flourished until the beginning of the Achaemenid Empire. The dates make them one of the oldest civilizations in the world, overlapping with the Sumerians, and yet there is no reference to them anywhere in historical documents, and all that's left of them today are random artifacts and crumbling ruins that can't tell anyone anything yet. The Danube Valley Civilization. The Danube Valley Civilization existed from between 5500 to 3500 BC, making it roughly as old as the Giraff culture. But this civilization is different because they lived in Europe, not in the original breadbasket of human society. They were probably the oldest complex civilization in Europe, covering a massive area from the north of Greece to Slovakia and all the way from Croatia to Romania. These people developed copper tools, created one of the oldest writing systems in the world, tied only with the writing system of Sumer, and they built the world's first 2-story houses. They made the earliest furniture in Europe, fashioning comfortable chairs and tables, while the rest of Europe was still living in caves and smashing rocks together. They learned how to spin and weave, how to process leather, how to manufacture clothing, and they apparently invented the wheel, the Jamon. Before the days of the samurais and ninjas in Japan, they too had a stone age, just like the rest of the world. Theirs started in the middle of the 11th century and went on until 300 BC. During those 800 years, the Jamon populated Japan. They were a group of Neolithic hunters and gatherers known as the rope pattern culture. This was because they did something unique that no other culture in the world did. They produced a distinct type of pottery using wet clay and twisted rope. This resulted in a unique pattern that they have found nowhere else on the globe. During the days of the ancient Jamon, there wasn't much going on. They lived in pits carved into the earth, primarily ate seafood, and didn't congregate in large groups. Researchers have found their settlements scattered throughout the Japanese islands in no particular pattern. They preferred living near the coast, as was clear by the massive mounds of discarded shells found on the outskirts of each tiny settlement. Did you know that rice wasn't really a thing until the ancient Jamon were gone? It was the Yayoi period of 300 BC to 250 AD that saw the rise of rice fields, mass cultivation, and highly advanced irrigation systems. Talking to the dead. Researchers at the Saluran Hypothesis in Malta have made some pretty fascinating discoveries. This place is a prehistoric necropolis from 5,000 years ago, a kind of mortuary temple on the Mediterranean island. It's an underground complex built in the Stone Age as a place for people to deposit the bones of their dead. They also used it as a shrine for ritual purposes. But there is one place inside the necropolis that's particularly interesting. It's called the Oracle Room, and it may have been used as a place to literally speak with the dead. At least the ancient people probably believed they were speaking to the dead. Scientists think the ancient residents of this place were able to use superacoustics to alter consciousness. In their altered states, people thought they could speak with their dead ancestors. Sound inside of this room doesn't act the way it should. Just one person speaking can make their voice reach frequencies that stimulate in a bone-chilling way. Archaeologist Fernando Coimbra said that during audio tests, he felt the speaker's voice cross his body at a high speed, leaving him weirdly relaxed. Even more amazing, Fernando said he occasionally had the illusion that the sound was reflected from his body and reverberating off the red ochre paintings on the room's walls. It's hard to say if this is ancient knowledge or just luck. The room takes sound in the baritone range of 70 to 130 hertz and vibrates them in a way that creates a natural phenomenon. This sound is so intense, bouncing off all the hard surfaces, that it has a physical effect on brain activity. The ancient people of Malta used that to their advantage, performing ceremonies and turning ordinary sounds into the grumbling chanting of the dead. Cult of Anubis. Anubis was the most important god in ancient Egypt. Depicted as a man with the head of a black jackal, he was originally the destroyer of corpses, though later he was associated with all things related to the processes after death. Oddly enough, he was actually called Anubis by the Greeks. His real name in Egypt was Anpu or Inpu. He was the god of the afterlife, of lost souls, and embalming. But what's truly fascinating is that archaeologists haven't uncovered any monumental temples dedicated to Anubis. The Egyptians understood that Anubis didn't need a temple. He was worshipped in the places he was associated with, the tombs and necropolises. One of the biggest reasons there wasn't a lot of grave robbing, relatively speaking, was that the Egyptians lived in fear of Anubis. He was the guardian of the dead, and they knew that anyone who desecrated a tomb would be punished in the afterlife. The cult of Anubis, those who dedicated their worship to the god of the dead, were active for a few thousand years. The cult originated in Middle Egypt, in the 17th province, where his worship was centered. The town in which the cult of Anubis was founded featured a large dog cemetery, but the cult was spread throughout the entirety of Egypt. In Egyptian mythology, Anubis was said to be the one who mummified Osiris after his death. Because of this, Anubis also became the patron god for embalmers. The embalmers, with their secret knowledge of mummification, worshipped Anubis at his graveyard shrines. But their real praise came in their jobs, making mummies that would last for thousands of years. Mesopotamia Scientists. In southern Mesopotamia, the area that is now known as Iraq, city-states began to emerge around 3,500 BC. That's over 5,000 years ago. The Sumerian civilization rose to power. The city of Babylon rose up under King Hammurabi, and Assyria became a powerful force in the north. For 3,000 years, Mesopotamia was a melting pot of development, destruction, and changing rulers. Babylon fell to the Persians in the year 539 BC. 200 years later, the Persians were conquered by the Greeks. But going all the way back to the beginning, we have to credit the original Sumerians with a great deal of what makes up modern life. Archaeologists say they developed the first writing system in 3200 BC. Their writing system started out with pictures conveying certain meanings, then turned into a series of signs called cuneiform. They also had a mysterious secret knowledge of mathematics. What many historians find interesting is that the Sumerians seem to have come up with a system for writing and advanced mathematical knowledge at the same time and from out of nowhere. Prior to the Sumerians, people didn't write, and people didn't know how to do math. Then, seemingly from thin air, these people were writing epic stories, practicing astronomy, developing their own medicines, and even dividing time into units. It was the Mesopotamians over 5,000 years ago who came up with 60 seconds to a minute and 60 minutes to an hour. And to give you an idea of just how bizarre all of this is, they figured out the wheel around 3500 BC, then complex mathematical theory in 3200 BC. It seems like a big stretch, even over 300 years. Some people wonder where they got all of this knowledge. Michelangelo the Doctor. It turns out the great painter and sculptor Michelangelo was a secret doctor. At least, he may have had an acute understanding of certain medical details that weren't revealed to the public for another few centuries after he was dead. This all has to do with Michelangelo's David. It's arguably the most famous sculpture in the world, and yet the Renaissance master of sculpting added something to David that you don't see on any other statues from that time. The prominent jugular vein in David's neck shows that Michelangelo had an understanding of the circulatory system at least 100 years before medical knowledge had reached that point. You might already know that the jugular vein is visible above a person's collarbone when they go into a state of excitement. And because David was about to battle the Philistine giant Goliath, it makes sense that he was physically excited. Michelangelo put this into his work, adding massive realism, but he did it 124 years before medical scientists documented the bulging of the jugular vein. Back then, artists like Michelangelo sometimes had a more impressive understanding of the human body than doctors. The Emerald Tablet. The Emerald Tablet is said to be a very old Hermetic text that was sought after by alchemists in the Middle Ages. Alchemists believe the tablet was written by the legendary figure Hermes Trismegistus from Hellenistic Egypt. This man was considered the very first to practice alchemical philosophy, and he wrote down his secrets on this mysterious tablet. It was allegedly discovered in a broken tomb underneath a statue of Hermes in ancient Tyana. When people went inside the tomb to investigate, they found the emerald tablet still clutched in Hermes' skeletal hands. Written on the green stone was every secret of the universe. There are a lot of other theories surrounding the Emerald Tablet. One legend says it was written by the third son of Adam and Eve, Seth. Others say the tablet was once kept secret in the Ark of the Covenant. Some stories say the tablet came from the lost city of Atlantis. The list goes on and on. No one knows if the Emerald Tablet actually exists. The closest thing that we know about is the Kitab Sir al-Haliki, or the Book of the Secret Creation of the Art of Nature. This was an Arabic work from the 8th century, composed of earlier writings on the secrets of alchemy. If the Emerald Tablet ever did exist, it's hard to know what kind of alchemical masteries it contained. What do you think it would say? Let me know in the comments below. Ancient Spanish medicine. Archaeologists excavated a man's skeleton at a medieval necropolis in Spain. This man died 1,000 years ago and was put in the necropolis of Can Rainers, located in an old military camp in the city of Palencia. The man died between the age of 25 and 30, but it wasn't for a lack of medical innovation. Scientists identified the first physical evidence of ferns being used in medical concoctions to treat a variety of conditions. Those living in ancient Palencia apparently had some previously undiscovered knowledge of herbal medicine. It was the skeleton teeth that revealed the mysterious medical practices. Researchers with the University of York found traces of starch grains and microscopic cells from plant spores. These plant spores were traced back to the ordinary fern leaf. What's really strange is that ferns were never eaten in recorded history. There is only one account from the 1st century that describes it being prepared in a drink to alleviate symptoms of sickness. When the Middle Ages came along, some doctors started experimenting with herbs and plants a lot more than others. One recipe called for fresh fern leaves to be sweetened with orange flowers and honey as a cure for dandruff, the common cold, or even kidney stones. And they were partially right. Recent studies have shown that ferns do indeed have healing properties. Although it's still better to go to the hospital if you have kidney stones rather than experimenting at home with fern leaves. The Maya calendars. The ancient Maya had a shockingly advanced way of tracking time. They had 3 main calendars. The first was a sacred calendar that lasted 260 days each cycle. This was what they used for scheduling religious ceremonies. But they had a second calendar very similar to the one we use to date. It consisted of 365 days, separating the year into 4 seasons. And finally, they had a long calendar, one that completed a major cycle which ended on December 21st, 2012. Considering it's currently 2022, we know the Maya didn't actually have some secret knowledge of a cataclysmic event that would cause the world to end. It's been 10 years, and the world is still turning. What they did have was sophisticated knowledge of how the Earth revolves around the sun. Though this wasn't necessarily due to astronomical revelations, they figured out when one year ended and the other began, and they were able to piece this together into one of the world's first functioning calendar systems. The Ancient House of Knowledge. If there was one repository for secret knowledge in the ancient world, it would be the Great Library of Alexandria, located in Egypt. It was the biggest and most significant library anywhere in the ancient world, part of a research institution called the Museion. This institution was dedicated to the Muses, the 9 goddesses of the arts. Historians believe the idea of the library was proposed by an exiled statesman named Demetrius of Phalerum. The library began its construction under the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus and quickly became one of the greatest places for knowledge seekers in the world. The scope of knowledge contained within the library was thanks to an aggressive policy to procure texts. Nobody knows today how many scrolls were housed here, but it's been estimated there were over 400,000 documents brought to the museum. And considering this was nearly 2,500 years ago, all of these scrolls were ancient. It contained the oldest writings in the world. We honestly can't even begin to imagine what kind of secrets people traveled here to learn from all over the world. But in the year 48 BC, Julius Caesar burned it down. Much of the ancient knowledge was lost, but the library survived. It was actually a lack of funding and support that saw the Great Library dwindle during the Roman period. Then it was fully destroyed between 270 and 275 AD. All of those ancient scrolls are now lost. Creating sea silk. There is only one person left alive who knows the ancient secret to produce sea silk. This ancient knowledge isn't quite as interesting as predicting the end of the world, but it's still pretty fascinating. Most silk you're familiar with probably comes from the cocoon of the mulberry silkworm larvae, but sea silk comes from a Mediterranean clam called the pen shell. The only person alive right now who knows how to extract the silk from the clam and turn it into the rarest fabric in the world is Chiara Vigo. When she's gone, the ancient tradition of silk will probably be gone too. Nobody knows exactly how far back the tradition of creating sea silk goes. We do know it was used by the Egyptians, Romans, and the Greeks. That means the tradition is at least 2,000 years old. What really separates sea silk from modern silk is that the final material glistens in sunlight like gold. This is why it was wildly popular among the richest and most powerful people of the ancient world. Some historians believe sea silk was the inspiration for the Egyptian myth of Jason and the Golden Fleece. But as with many traditions, this one slowly fell out of favor. People stopped learning how to make it, stopped caring, and now only one woman on the island of Sardinia knows how to do it. The mysterious Dogon tribe. The Dogon tribe of Mali dates back to 3200 BC. These ancient people had a mysterious knowledge of space that almost seems impossible. For example, they had knowledge about the Sirius system in our galaxy over 5,000 years before it was discovered by scientists in 1862. This African tribe was able to identify Sirius A, the brightest star in the night sky, but they also identified a much dimmer star near it, Sirius B. They commemorated Sirius A's 50-year orbit around Sirius B with something called a Sugi celebration. To sum it up, a primitive tribe identified 2 stars in a remote system locked in orbit. We don't know how, but they did. What's even stranger is that the Dogon's oral traditions speak of extraterrestrials. Not only did they have an in-depth knowledge of the solar system, but they also talked about aliens coming down to Earth and visiting them. They described these aliens as ugly, amphibious monsters that looked like mermaids. They called them the Nomos and believed they lived in the Sirius system. Do you think this is a part of their religious beliefs? How do you think they knew about the stars? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!